12-pound iron cannonball hits wet ground at the edge of an infantry column, bounces once, and tears through 4 ranks of men standing shoulder to shoulder. It does not explode. It does not need to. At 600 yards, a solid iron sphere moving at 900 feet per second removes limbs on contact. The men behind the ones it hits are covered in blood that is not theirs. Nobody moves. They close the gap and keep standing. Everything you picture when you hear Napoleon's army comes from oil paintings. Clean blue uniforms, polished brass, cavalry sweeping across sunlit fields. The real Grande Armée was the largest military force Europe had ever assembled, and most of its soldiers were teenagers who had never touched a musket before the draft notice arrived. 600,000 men crossed the Niemen River into Russia in June of 1812. Fewer than 10,000 walked back out. This is what Napoleon's army actually looked like. Napoleon does not build an army. He builds a system. The levée en masse, mass conscription, gives him access to every unmarried man in France between the ages of 20 and 25. Each department receives a quota. Names are drawn by lottery. A drawn name means service. Wealthy families can hire a substitute, someone who serves in their son's place for a fee that climbs every year the wars drag on. The men who actually fill the ranks are overwhelmingly rural, poor, and young. Most have never left the province they were born in. A conscript receives roughly 3 months of drill before deployment. He learns to march, load, and fire. Combat is the rest of the training. The Grande Armée is not a French army. By 1812, more than half its soldiers are not French. The force that invades Russia includes Poles, Germans, Italians, Dutch, Austrians, Prussians, Swiss, Croatians, Portuguese, and Spaniards, some willing allies, most conquered subjects marching under compulsion. It is the European Union as a military draft, organized at bayonet point. The real innovation is not battlefield tactics. It is organizational structure. Napoleon divides the army into self-contained corps, each one a miniature army with its own infantry, cavalry, artillery, and supply train, capable of fighting independently for 24 hours until the next corps arrives. The corps system lets the army march on multiple roads at once, covering 3 to 4 times the ground of a traditional single-column force. One corps of 25,000 men stretches roughly 10 miles on the road. The entire Grande Armée in a single column would stretch over 150 miles. 5 full marching days between the front and the rear. The corps system turns a parade into a machine. The machine is fast. Standard march rate is 15 miles a day. In forced marches before a major battle, the infantry covers 25. The army that fights at Austerlitz in December of 1805 marches over 500 miles in 5 weeks to reach the field. Most of the soldiers fight the same afternoon they arrive. No other force on the continent can move at that speed. By the time the enemy realizes there will be a battle, the battle has already started. A French line infantryman carries roughly 60 pounds of equipment. His musket, the Charleville model, weighs 10 pounds, fires a .69 caliber lead ball, and is accurate to roughly 50 yards. Beyond that, the smoothbore barrel sends the ball wherever physics decides. At 100 yards, a trained soldier misses a man-sized target more often than he hits it. Effective range is the length of a football field. The army compensates with volume. 3 ranks deep, each man firing 2 to 3 rounds per minute, producing a wall of lead that does not require individual aim. His uniform is a blue wool coat with white trousers, weighing 8 pounds dry and nearly double that when soaked through. After 6 months on campaign, the blue has faded to gray, the seams have split, and the shoes, square-toed leather made for neither left nor right foot, have been walked through to bare sole. Soldiers wrap their feet in rags and stuff straw into whatever remains of the shoe. The painting version of the Grande Armée is a parade. The field version is 60,000 men who look like they survived a flood. Rations arrive when supply wagons find the column, which on a long march is roughly every third day. The official ration is bread and meat. The actual diet is whatever the soldiers strip from the countryside they cross. A single corps of 25,000 men requires roughly 50,000 pounds of bread per day. The land behind the army looks like a plague passed through it. Water comes from whatever ditch or river the column crosses. Dysentery is not an exception. It is a constant. Soldiers who survive the march and the water still face the weather. Woolen coats in 90-degree summer heat. Those same coats at 20 below in winter. The wool does not change. The soldier adjusts or dies. The bayonet is 17 inches of steel fixed to the muzzle. In theory, it decides battles. In practice, one side almost always breaks and runs before the blades make contact. The bayonet charge is a morale weapon. The threat of impalement by a sprinting line of men shatters a formation before the steel arrives. Actual hand-to-hand bayonet combat is rare, brief, and overwhelmingly fatal for whoever hesitates. December 2nd, 1805. Austerlitz. The battle that breaks two empires in a single morning. Fog blankets the field. The Allied army, Austrian and Russian forces under Tsar Alexander and Emperor Francis, moves off the Pratzen Heights to attack what they believe is Napoleon's weak right flank. Napoleon has deliberately thinned that flank to bait exactly this. As the Allied columns descend into fog-filled lowlands, he sends Marshal Soult's corps straight up the heights they just vacated. The fog lifts. The French hold the high ground. The Allied army is cut in two. Infantry columns advance to musket range, halt, and trade volleys at 60 yards, close enough to see the faces of the men they are killing. Black powder smoke is so thick that after the third volley, both sides are firing blind into a gray wall. Officers navigate by sound. Soldiers reload by muscle memory, 15 separate motions to load, ram, prime, and fire, while lead balls snap past at subsonic speed. A single battalion volley, 600 muskets discharged within 2 seconds, drops 30 to 50 men in the opposing line. The survivors step over the fallen and close the gaps. Artillery does the real killing. 12-pound cannons fire solid iron balls that bounce across flat ground and carve lanes through packed formations. At close range, the crews switch to canister. Tin cans packed with musket balls that turn a cannon into a shotgun. A single canister, round at 200 yards, kills or wounds a dozen men in one discharge. The Allied rout ends on the frozen ponds south of the heights. Thousands of retreating Russian soldiers flee across the ice. French artillery depresses its barrels and fires into the surface. The ice cracks. Men, horses, and gun carriages disappear into freezing black water. Napoleon wins the battle in under 9 hours. The Allied coalition loses over 26,000 men. The Holy Roman Empire, a political entity that has existed for more than 800 years, ceases to exist within 12 months of this afternoon. If you want to see what happened when this machine marched into Russia, subscribe. June of 1812. The Grande Armée crosses the Niemen River into Russia. 615,000 soldiers, the largest invasion force in European history. The column is so long that it takes 3 full days for the army to cross a single river.